Hey church, we want to give you a quick overview of what Cathy Madavan spoke about on Sunday. Although the best way to do that is get online to our website, mylgcc.com, and go to our podcast page and media page, and you can listen to her sermon. I encourage you to do that. It's the best way to just get a quick overview or to hear what she spoke about. But Cathy spoke from James chapter 1, particularly verses 22 to 25, and really asked us a couple of questions. What are we intently looking at? What are we gazing upon? And what difference does that make to your life? Is what you're looking at leading you into freedom? What you gaze upon, does it lead you into freedom? James talks about the perfect law will lead you into freedom. I wonder what the perfect law is. I wonder what that looks like for you. Yeah, and Cathy used the illustration of a mirror, and we want all mirrors to tell us what we want to hear and what we want to see. But there comes a point when we need to move beyond what we want to hear and what we want to see. And when you look into the mirror, it's supposed to have an impact on us. And James, in his writings, he says it's weird to think that we can look in the mirror, turn away and walk away, and forget what we've looked at. And James uses that illustration of a mirror. And the reality is we can be guilty of doing that in our relationship with God. We can glance at his word, put it down, and then forget what we've read. We forget what God's done. We can lose in the moments of life. We can look back and not see God's faithfulness, and we can forget what his word says and what God has done in our lives. When we simply glance at God's word, we can forget. We cannot expect God's truth to fully transform us unless we intently look at his word, unless we intentionally choose to gaze upon him, to gaze upon what he has done, what he is doing, and then ultimately what he's going to do. But in gaze upon his word, we can intently look at many, many things. And the reality is, for so many of us, those things that we look at can be a distraction. They can be a distraction to us. They can make us feel better in the moment, or can make us feel like a better human in those moments. But actually, we can sometimes be guilty of only seeing what we want to see or hearing what we want to hear. And when we do that, what we see becomes distorted. You have these mirrors sometimes, and you look at them, and because of the framing of the mirror, you can see a distorted picture of yourself, or it creates a funny shape of yourself. You know those mirrors. And the reality is, sometimes what we're gazing and looking intently upon, what we get back can be really distorted and conform to be a distraction over our lives. When we gaze intentionally on God's word, and we need to be deliberate about that, we need to be determined to do that. But I wonder what happens when we choose to gaze on God's truth, when we move from simply glimpsing at his word to gazing on it. James again says the perfect law gives freedom. You are blessed not by what you believe, but what you do. James is really clear. Read it for yourself in James chapter 1. He says, do what it says. Don't just believe it. Yes, believe it, but then do what it says. Wisdom is belief in action. And we need to not just believe in wise choices, we need to make wise choices about life and how we live. None of this happens by accident, but always when we're intentional about doing what God says. We need to turn away from faulty reflections and fix our eyes on Jesus. I wonder what that looks like for you. I want to ask you a series of questions just to help you. This might be something you can use in your own personal devotion, or you can use this as a connect group right now, and maybe you want to just pause the video at the point after I ask the question. You can discuss that, think about that yourself, and then go on to the next question. But the first question is, what has impacted you from this teaching and from what you've read in James chapter 1? The second question is there anything you're looking at that you're intently focused on that isn't leading you to freedom? Is there anything you are intently looking at that isn't leading you into freedom? And the third question is, James says perfect law leads us to freedom. I wonder, what is the perfect law, and what do you think freedom looks like? What is the perfect law, and what do you think freedom looks like? And then the fourth and final question is, what do you think you need to do as a result of hearing this message today? What do you think you need to do as a result of hearing this message?